A major Supreme Court move has just sent shockwaves through gun laws across the United States. The consequences are already unfolding. This is not a symbolic ruling. This is not a narrow technical decision that only lawyers care about. This is a shift that affects how courts evaluate gun laws, how states write new restrictions, and how gun owners must think about compliance going forward. The first thing to understand is this. When the Supreme Court speaks on firearms, it does not just resolve one dispute. It sets rules for every lower court in the country. Those rules shape what laws survive, what laws fall, and how fast states can push new regulations. Even when a decision appears limited on the surface, its reasoning travels far beyond the original case. What just happened is best described as a recalibration. For the last few years, lower courts have been struggling to apply the Supreme Court's earlier guidance on the Second Amendment. Some judges demanded extremely strict historical proof before allowing any modern gun regulation. Others applied the rules loosely and upheld almost everything. The result was chaos. Similar laws were struck down in one state and upheld in another. That inconsistency is what the Supreme Court has now addressed. The court made clear that the Second Amendment is not frozen in time, but it is also not optional. Courts must look to history and tradition, but they are not required to find perfect historical copies of modern laws. Instead, they must identify historical principles that are meaningfully similar. This may sound subtle, but it is powerful. It tells lower courts to stop playing extremes and start applying a structured analysis. Why does this matter to gun owners right now? Because this framework determines which laws take effect, which are blocked, and which are enforced, while challenges drag on for years. A law does not need to be perfect to survive initial review anymore. If a state can plausibly tie a regulation to historical practices aimed at preventing violence, that law may remain active long enough to change lives before courts ever reach a final answer. This is where many people misunderstand the impact. Some hear Supreme Court involvement and assume gun rights automatically expand. Others assume the opposite. The reality is more complicated. The court has reinforced that gun rights exist, but it has also clarified that certain targeted restrictions can coexist with those rights when due process and historical grounding are present. Another key element of this shift is how courts now view risk and process. The court emphasized that findings of dangerousness, when made through proper legal procedures, can justify temporary restrictions. That language matters. It signals that courts will pay close attention to whether a law includes notice, hearings, evidence, and clear standards. Laws that skip these safeguards remain vulnerable. Laws that include them gain strength. This affects more than criminal cases. Civil proceedings now matter more than ever. Protective orders, restraining orders, and administrative determinations can trigger serious firearm consequences even without criminal convictions. The Supreme Court's guidance makes clear that when these processes are structured and specific, they carry legal weight. For gun owners, this means paperwork and procedure have become as important as behavior. Missing a hearing, ignoring a notice, or assuming a civil matter is harmless can now have immediate and severe consequences. The system does not pause to confirm your intentions. It enforces based on records. Another nationwide impact involves legislative strategy. States watch Supreme Court language closely. When the court clarifies what kind of reasoning is acceptable, lawmakers adapt quickly. We are already seeing states draft laws designed to fit within the newly emphasized framework. These laws are often narrower, more procedural, and framed as temporary or individualized. That design makes them harder to challenge quickly. This is why gun law changes now arrive quietly. Instead of sweeping bans announced with press conferences, states implement layered requirements. Permits, training mandates, reporting deadlines, storage rules, and administrative reviews become the tools of regulation. Each one seems small. Together, they reshape ownership. Enforcement is the next phase. When the Supreme Court clarifies standards, enforcement agencies gain confidence. Laws that were previously enforced cautiously are applied more aggressively. Officers, prosecutors, and regulators rely on the court's language to justify actions that might have been questioned before. This creates a dangerous lag for the public. People continue living under assumptions formed years earlier, while the legal ground beneath them shifts. By the time enforcement increases, many are already out of compliance without realizing it. Another overlooked effect is how this impacts future challenges. Laws that survive early review gain momentum. Courts are less likely to issue emergency injunctions. That means laws stay active longer, shaping behavior and expectations. Even if a law is later struck down, the damage may already be done through arrests, prosecutions, costs, and lost rights. The Supreme Court also sent a message about balance. It rejected the idea that governments can rely on vague labels or broad categories to restrict rights. At the same time, it rejected the notion that only identical historical laws count. The focus is now on justification, scope, and burden. How broad is the restriction? How long does it last? Who does it affect? What problem does it claim to address? These questions will dominate gun law litigation going forward, They will also dominate legislation. States will design laws to appear narrow, evidence-based, and procedurally sound. Gun owners must recognize this pattern to understand what is coming next. This moment is not about panic. It is about awareness. The Supreme Court did not end the Second Amendment, and it did not eliminate regulation. It clarified the rules of the game. Those rules favor preparation over reaction. If you own firearms, plan to buy them, carry them, or transfer them, the environment just became less forgiving. Precision matters, timing matters, silence matters, understanding your local procedures matters more than ever. In Part 2, we will break down what this Supreme Court shift means in practical terms. We will look at how states are already responding, what kinds of laws are most likely to survive under the new framework, and what specific mistakes gun owners must avoid as enforcement ramps up nationwide. Now let's talk about what this Supreme Court shift means in the real world. Because doctrine does not matter if you do not understand how it shows up in your daily life. The danger is not the ruling itself. The danger is how states, agencies, and courts will use it going forward. The first practical effect is how states are writing new gun laws right now. Legislatures are no longer chasing massive, obvious bans that trigger immediate backlash. Instead, they are drafting narrower laws that focus on process rather than prohibition. These laws often target specific situations, specific people, or specific conditions. On paper, they look reasonable. In practice, they expand control. Expect to see more laws tied to findings rather than categories. Instead of banning ownership for entire groups, states will rely on court determinations, administrative reviews, or temporary orders. That makes these laws harder to challenge quickly because courts are more willing to accept restrictions that claim individualized review and due process. Second, enforcement behavior will change. When legal standards are unclear, enforcement tends to be cautious. When the Supreme Court clarifies the rules, enforcement accelerates. Police, prosecutors, and regulators gain confidence that their actions will survive review. This means closer scrutiny during routine encounters, more aggressive charging decisions, and less hesitation to pursue technical violations. Third, compliance errors will matter more than intent. Many gun owners still believe that good faith protects them. It does not. If a law requires a permit, a training certificate, a storage method, or a reporting deadline, failure to comply can trigger penalties even if no harm occurred. The Supreme Court's guidance reinforces that courts will focus on whether procedures were followed, not whether the outcome feels fair. Fourth, civil proceedings become a major risk area. Protective orders, restraining orders, and administrative findings now carry heavier consequences. These processes move quickly and rely heavily on paperwork. Missing a hearing, ignoring a notice, or assuming a civil case is not serious can instantly change your legal status. Firearm possession can become illegal without a single criminal conviction. Fifth, delays now work against gun owners. Under the clarified framework, courts are less likely to immediately block new laws. That means laws stay active longer while challenges proceed. During that time, people are arrested, charged, and forced to spend money defending themselves. Even if a law is later overturned, the process has already punished many. Sixth, public confusion will increase. Headlines oversimplify Supreme Court decisions, and social media amplifies bad takes. Some people will believe nothing changed. Others will believe everything changed. Both reactions are dangerous. The truth is that the structure changed, and structure determines outcomes. So what should gun owners do right now? First, shift your mindset. Stop thinking in terms of broad rights alone and start thinking in terms of procedures. Ask yourself what paperwork applies to you, what deadlines exist, and what actions could trigger review. Second, stay current. Laws that survived challenges last year may be enforced differently this year. Third, treat civil matters seriously. If a court sends you paperwork, respond. Silence is not neutral. Fourth, be cautious during interactions. Words, messages, and online posts can become evidence in ways people do not expect. When the legal environment tightens, context matters less than records. Fifth, do not rely on outdated advice. What worked in another state or another year may not protect you now. The Supreme Court did not create instant chaos. It created a new operating system for gun law. States are already adapting. Enforcement will follow. The owners who adjust early will avoid trouble. Those who assume nothing changed will find out too late. This is the new reality. Awareness is now part of ownership.